Hey, what's up, guys? Davey here with a very different kind of review. I really don't do these kind of reviews very often, but I feel that after the release and eventual tumble of Batman vs Superman, I feel like it's only appropriate to review slash analyze the comic book that inspired that movie, and possibly the only comic book that Zack Snyder read in research for directing the film. Anyways, here we have my review for Frank Miller's Batman The Dark Knight Returns, which is a 4-issue comic miniseries that was released in 1986 by Frank Miller, along with, I should also credit the artists here, Klaus Janson and Lynn Varley. And the three of them collaborated on this book called The Dark Knight Returns, which tells the story of an aged Batman, or Bruce Wayne, who has retired the cape and cowl for about 10 years, but something deep inside him burns to just come back. And of course, he dons the cape once again to become the Dark Knight and take on crime, only to realize that the elements around him may have changed since his last outing as the Caped Crusader. So that's basically what the book is all about, and I feel like this is one of the best interpretations of Batman. I know that that's been said dozens of times about this book, but the reason why I'm going to kind of combine my talk about this book between not only being a review of the book, but also being a comic book strip to screen analysis of how this book is superior than Batman vs Superman, is because I feel like that's a little bit more just, because anybody could review this book, but to analyze where this where this book succeeds over the film is where it's basically what really disappoints us about Batman vs Superman, where the people that are angry at that film are angry not so much because of the film itself. The film was good. It wasn't that bad, but it wasn't that great. It was just kind of good. I gave it a low 7 out of 10. If you guys want to check out my review, then be sure to check that out in my channel. But the reason for why it angered so many people, myself included, is not so much the film itself, but the opportunities they missed to develop a great film of Batman fighting Superman, just like they did in The Dark Knight Returns. Now, to kind of break it down without spoiling the book, because I genuinely want you guys to check this book out. It's very cheap, and it's a very quick read. It's made out of 4 issues, and they call them books, and Frank Miller calls them books in this little collection here, but they're more so issues that are only about between 20 to 30 pages, I believe, each one, average. And it takes about, I don't know, like, I read for like about 45 minutes to an hour every night for like 4 nights in a row. And there you go, it was done. It was like some good casual night reading, but it has plenty of material that is just excellent for the foundation of a great movie, and that's why they went ahead and they made an animated film, a 2-part animated film, The Dark Knight Returns, which I don't know why it needed to be 2 parts, but I don't know, there's some kind of contract out there that says whenever WB and DC make those animated films, they all have to be like an hour and 15 minutes, and I never fucking understood why they need to be that runtime. It's ridiculous. They ask us to spend full price on Blu-rays for a movie that's only like an hour and 15 minutes. That's always turned me off from buying those movies on any kind of medium. But anyways, the reason for why I feel like this is a great read is because it's a very quick read. It doesn't take an awful lot of time, and it does tackle every aspect of Batman's life, not only in the universe of Batman and Gotham City and that little area of this universe, but also it acknowledges that this broader universe does exist, in which we got Superman, we got mentions of the Justice League, and we even have a surprise appearance by another DC character later on in the book. And that's the thing, is that it's kind of, even though it's made up of 4 issues, it's kind of divided into halves. The first 2 books or so, it's about Bruce Wayne saying, you know what, screw it, I'm going to embrace this spirit inside of me and become Batman once more, which is one of the things that I loved about the book, is that it's almost like Batman is teetering on having a second personality, where he's trying so hard to be Bruce Wayne, but there's this spirit inside him, this animal inside him that wants to come out. And sometimes Frank Miller and the artist would literally illustrate that with panels of the bat coming towards the point of view of the panel, and that shows just how much of this beast lurks inside him, to the point where maybe he might at one point break down when he's in his like 60s or 70s, because in this book he's 55 years old, and here he's that's in this day and age. I mean, in 1986, he might be considered an old man, and trust me, this is a very 80s book. Like the whole setting, the look of it, is very 80s. Ronald Reagan even has an appearance in the book, so there's no mistake that this takes place in contemporary time at the release of the book, which was 1986. And so, what I love is that it really breaks down Batman's psychosis. In those first two books, it's about him returning and realizing that he is not young. Sure, he's not the oldest. In fact, Alfred shows up, and I was like, how is Alfred even alive? And apparently, he's in his 80s. So he's at the point where he's going to be out at any second. And Bruce is just 30 years younger than him. And what I love is that it breaks down his psychosis, realizing that maybe this is all just too much. And to a certain extent, he kind of gets tempted to saying, I was wrong. But he's like, no. Gotta keep going. There's a segment in the book where he's blacking out from some of his injuries, and he's like, no, gotta push on, gotta keep going. And what I also love, something that Frank Miller did in the book that I really enjoy, is that it really does, you really have Batman monologuing, but it's not just him. You also have other characters monologuing. Batman is the one that does the majority of the monologuing within the book, but he doesn't just paint Bruce as the center of the universe. He's simply just part of this universe, and you're just looking at it through his eyes. But we do need to understand other characters to see where they're coming from in relation to Batman. Not just about their life, not just about their thing like, oh, I gotta go do this. You have monologues for every single one of these characters, and Frank Miller lets you know who's talking and who's not, because he legitimately color coded the monologues from panel to panel. So Batman is like this darker, palish, well, not palish, it's like a very dark and muted green, whereas Superman's monologue is like really bright and blue, obviously. And that's the thing, is that whenever these characters talk, it's always related to Batman. Whenever Superman talks in the latter chapters of the book, which is where that other expanded universe comes into play, we get Superman, we get mentions of the Justice League, we get other things, but all of that still relates to Batman, because that's what it's called. It's The Dark Knight Returns. So it's all about Bruce Wayne, but it doesn't just center and focus on him so that the story is one-sided. It's all about the aspects of Bruce's life, and used as tools to break down the psychosis of this guy who could be borderline insane. Like, this book makes no mistake that this guy might just have a little bit of an obsession with his glory days, and he's just not willing to let that go. And Superman reminds him that, Alfred Pennyworth reminds him that, and his recruitment of a brand new Robin is a demonstration of that, to where this girl, Carrie Kelly, who assumes the role of the new Robin, is kind of like Batman's attempt to try to recreate those days. Like, she barely comes into the picture, and he's like, you're good, you're Robin, come with me. And Alfred's like, dude, what the hell? She's just like 13 years old. Why are you doing this? So I really do enjoy the breakdown of the character of Bruce Wayne in a way that I've never seen before. At least I haven't seen in any kind of medium in some time. You know, we've been used to the traditional Bruce Wayne, who's like 30 years old, and we see the origin story, but it's been a while since I've encountered a very unique story for Bruce Wayne. And like I said, there's various aspects that they tackle in this book, and there's certain segments of each issue where they even go away from Bruce and they analyze the psychosis of other characters from not only Bruce's life, like Commissioner Gordon, the Joker, Alfred, and of course this new Robin, but also other areas of the world like Superman. And ever so often we have news bulletins that kind of demonstrate that Gotham in and of itself is also its own character, and it has gone to practically shit. In the 10 years that he has been absent, obviously crime has been growing, so things have become much more brutal. And since things have become much more savage and brutal, Batman has to be that type of character as well. And here he's legitimately scary. Not only in the way that he's illustrated by being this hulking figure with a giant bat symbol, similar to how he looks in this brand new Batman vs Superman movie, but he has to take on new intimidation methods and new ways to dispatch the scum of Gotham, most of which have been made up by this new gang called the Mutant Army, that showcases just how much he might be behind his time, to where he is at the brink of death during his first encounter with the mutant gang leader. So that's kind of like a reality check for Bruce. Like, I don't know if I should do this. And the story for the book, without going to spoilers, culminates with the epic fight between Batman and Superman. But unlike the movie, and this is where I'm going to go ahead and start getting into the analytical portion of this review, where I'm mainly comparing the book to the movie, because most of you by now probably will have already read the book, and if you have not, hopefully by now you have made the decision to do so. But the reason for why the book succeeds in which the movie failed in pitching these two titans against each other is that they are titans that walk the earth. And people, the common folk of Earth, they don't take it very well to seeing these two type of figures not only walk amongst them but also fight to each other. And that's the foundation for this fight between Batman and Superman, where Superman wants to fully retire. Like, he fully acknowledges that they are past their prime, and there's quick mentions about where the Justice League are now reside after the past few years, where they said, you know what, we're done with this, we can't be doing this anymore. And some ended up in better places, some in not so good places, and that's when that surprise character comes into play. Bruce, on the other hand, is like, yeah, no, my work will probably not be done until I am dead. And that right there is what you can use to make a great fight between Batman and Superman, because it's not just about the cool fight sequences and seeing the punches being delivered to one another. You got that iconic panel of Batman taking a right hook. He's using his right hand, a right hook across Superman's face, and it's a very symbolic imagery. Like, oh my god, Superman is getting punched in the face. And of course, there's reasons as to why this is happening within the fight that I'm not going to spoil, that are similar to that of Batman vs Superman. But what made that fight very important and very exciting within the book is the fact that it's a confrontation not just between fists and physical prowess, but it's also the clash of two ideologies, of two people that are legitimately disagreeing. And one of the things that alluded to this fight that I thought was a great scene, it's the one scene that I think is right on par with the actual fight scene, is the scene where Bruce and Clark, and I'm talking about the book as well as the animated movie, but more so the book because that's where it came from. And it's a scene in which Bruce and Clark are legitimately just chilling out in like a field. They're riding horses, or at least Bruce was riding horses. Bruce just chilling, looking all Superman-like. But they have this conversation that is intense, without the need for like suspenseful music, without the need for anything just too over the top. Clark just lays it out flat. You do know that one of these days somebody with authority is going to ask me to bring you in. And I can't remember the exact dialogue, but he's pretty much saying, you're practically going to be coming with me kicking and screaming. And Bruce says, okay, well, when that comes, may the best man win. And I'm like, oh my god, see, there it is. You could have had this in the movie Batman vs Superman, but instead you're stuck. And like I said, this is where the book was far superior to the movie, because they didn't establish that kind of thing in the movie, because they were just too busy trying to set up the Justice League, trying to set up other characters and other subplots, that they failed to realize. It's like somebody told the writers that in this book called The Dark Knight Returns, Batman and Superman fight, and they skipped the first 3 issues and went towards the end, and they're like, where is it? Ooh, that suit, it looks really cool, let's use it. And that's pretty much what they took and put into the movie, and they kind of rode around that. And that's pretty much what we ended up with in Batman vs Superman. Now, the counter argument to that is that there are some cool stuff in The Dark Knight Returns that they went ahead and they put into the movie. Now, who would have been that person that put that stuff into the script? Who knows? It was definitely not the person who came up with the idea to shoehorn in Doomsday, because he's nowhere in here. Spoiler alert, he's not in the book. That's not the whole basis of the fight. There's no Wonder Woman, but there's allusions to Wonder Woman via some visual cues and stuff like that. But there are some neat stuff that they took from The Dark Knight Returns that they put into Batman vs Superman that are actually rather subtle and are actually kind of cathartic, that I really did like. That besides obviously the recreational look of the armored suit and some of the lines of dialogue that you have heard in the trailer, where he says it's time for you to learn what it means to be a man. That's actually lifted from here. But there's also some other touches that not only make it cool for the book, but also made it cool for the movie. That I'm like, okay, that was nice. For me, the one that stood out to me the most is that in this book they also recreate the famous Thomas and Martha Wayne murder, just like they do in the opening sequence of the movie. And similar to here in the book, they went ahead and they took the part where and Thomas Wayne has always been illustrated as a guy who took action during that scene where he's about to get killed. Like he's actually gonna try to do something about it in some way or another. And both in this book and in the movie, he does this thing where he's protecting his family, he's protecting his wife and his son Bruce. But when he's holding back his son, he forms a fist with his hand, and that's what he uses to try to knock out the mugger before he's eventually killed. That's actually in here, and I love that they took that and put that into the movie, because that's actually a visual moment that I really love during that opening sequence of Batman vs Superman. So that's what made it much more tragic that they didn't go along with the actual political background between Batman and Superman's fight. So yeah, besides not only delivering a great clash between two of the most iconic superheroes, Batman vs Superman, it's also a very deep and thought-provoking look at of how Bruce/Batman's mind work, both on the field when he's trying to fight bad guys, but also why it is that he's Batman in the first place, and why he continues to be stubborn to be Batman even at his age. If there was anything about this book that I could nitpick and say I didn't like, would be that ever so often there's these segments where they cut to these news bulletins that kind of shed some background as to what's going on within Gotham City. What are people talking about Batman, about Superman, about this impending crisis that's happening around the world that is relevant to Batman and Superman's ideologies. But sometimes they could drag on just a little too much, to where we have like pages, like 2 or 3 pages in a row of just like news bulletins of them discussing certain things. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of sped read through a couple of those, where I'm like, okay, so okay, moving on. Next to going on to Batman. So if there was any nitpicks, it would be that. But besides that, this is an excellent read that I dare say I might reread in some time when I feel like coming back to it. And I'm hoping that at least Dark Knight 3 is just as good, because from what I hear, Dark Knight Strikes Back, which was actually the sequel to this from 2001, not so great, to put it mildly. So I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should skip that and go to 3, or if I should try to check it out. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. But as it stands, I give Batman The Dark Knight Returns a low 9 out of 10. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of The Dark Knight Returns. If you have read it, but if not, and would like to purchase the book, use the link in the description below. And I definitely recommend it. This is a great read filled with an awful lot of lore, an awful lot of background information as to what has happened in those 10 years, as well as a very thought-provoking analysis of the Batman and everything that he stands for. And it just makes me all much sadder that they didn't take more inspiration from this book, besides the cool gadgetry and the cool lines of dialogue, but they should have taken the more substantial things out of this book and put it into Batman vs Superman. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.